What's up, guys? Today we are discussing Cyberpunk 2077, a much and highly anticipated game, and actually a game many of you guys have requested me to take a look at. So I'm going to take a quick look. I can't cover everything because let's just say the gameplay, there's a lot of gameplay. I think there's like 42 minutes of gameplay, and everything looks absolutely beautiful. I must say it looks beautiful and it looks flawless, and I can only imagine how it's going to look when they actually get time to polish some of these moves, some of these animations, some of these mechanics for when it comes out. So let's get straight into it and take a look at Cyberpunk 2077. So getting right into it, let's cover the reload animation. I'm not entirely in love with this reload animation. However, I do think one thing I love seeing is something I like to call not perfection, right? When your hero is perfect, let's say if someone's jumping, you have an animation on your demo reel where the person is jumping from one spot to another spot, and it's a pretty big jump, and they just perfectly landed, right? They perfectly stick the jump, the landing, everything. It's just flawless. And that's a perfect animation. One thing that you can add some texture to the animation is, let's say they don't stick it, right? They almost trip or they almost fall off the ledge that they were holding on. Or during the animation, they trip. If you get a chance to put some dirt on your character, something that's actually it's actually promoted in films, is when the character, they have a background. They're not a flawless character. They have, some flaws that the protagonist has, and it humanizes them, right? It brings you back to reality. It's the same thing you can add with your animation. If someone's running, let's say they stumble the first time. And it's one thing that the Uncharted series, I know I hate bringing up the Uncharted series, but it's one thing that it does really well. Sometimes they'll have a fake out when you jump on a ledge and, the ledge gives out. So in this reload animation, getting back to it, I know I went on a little tangent there, but the reload animation, one thing I love is that the girl doesn't get the clip in the gun the first time. Like there's a little bit of maneuvering, and then she gets it into the gun. And I love certain things like that because you'll see a reload animation and it's just flawless. She gets it in the first time, or the girl gets in the first time, and done and done. So any time you can add that little texture, I suggest you add it. Now let's move on to this shot where she gets into the car. And there's a lot of great stuff going on. I can't cover everything once again, but notice the settle of his body showing the weight of his arm. Because he goes up to smoke the cigarette and he drops his arm back down on his leg. And you can see how his body reacts to that dropping of weight to show that, this is a pretty big guy, but also it's a great thing to show that settling of the body so that, because the body's connected, right? If if the arm moves out, the whole body is going to adjust to that. And if it's a clear and present sign of a new animator as opposed to a more advanced animator. I know many of this is probably motion capture, but it takes an advanced animator to input that in to add keyframes if it's not already in the motion capture. It's something that you have an eye, you develop an eye for. When it comes to his lip sync, the lip sync is a little off. One thing I always notice that many of these games have, the lip sync is always off for some reason. I don't know why. So when it comes to him offering her the chip, one thing I love is that his hand doesn't freeze. So in some games, when there's an item for you to grab or an item that another character is giving you, an NPC or someone is giving you, it's usually a freeze frame where the hand freezes and it's just motionless. One thing I love in this is that there's a subtle little stagger to his hand animation, right? It's not completely still, it's a moving hold. And if you try to hold something out in front of you, you'll notice no matter how much you want to hold it completely still, the human body, you just can't do it. And I love that they added that in there. It's a little small touch, but everything is noticeable. Now, this brings us to something that is, once again, sign of a new animator versus a more advanced animator. And when you're doing, let's say, a dialogue piece and the hand is positioned on the arm, one thing many new animators love to do is pin that arm to the leg. So whenever the leg moves, the arm moves. And it's a cheap way of getting around the animation. But if an animator is looking at the reel and they see this, they're going to notice that the arm is pinned to the leg. It's something that, all of us have done before, and that's why we notice it. So in this case, it's a subtle little animation, but his arm moves just ever so slightly and readjusts when he goes back to his position. Subtle stuff like that lets him know, hey, he's not pinning, animation. There's no twinning going on. It's things like that that gives sign of a more advanced animator. and I absolutely appreciate it. Skipping over a few things, this brings us to the Militech lady. Now, one thing I love about her are her poses. All of her poses are absolutely power poses. Like, even when you meet her, she has one hand on her hip, the other hand, by her side, but there's a slight tilt to her pose. And this is the importance of posing. Like, you can read a character just by one pose. And as throughout the scene goes, it's always power poses. Either her hands are folded, hands by her side. If you can't tell by the pose, then you can definitely tell by her face and her demeanor. And that is a great thing, that you can just read a character, how they're feeling by a certain pose. It's going to help your animation tenfold, trust me. This now leads us into the scene with Dum Dum. I'm not joking, that's actually the character's name, Dum Dum. Now, Dum Dum, there's a lot of great stuff in this acting when you meet this character, but one thing I love to see is subtle ways of showing weight. And the way we see this is him pushing this case up and displaying the weapon, the spider weapon. And if you notice, it's not a lot of resistance that he's showing, but it's just enough to give to the audience, let us know that, hey, it's not really a heavy case, but it's heavy enough that it's going to take some time for you to push it up and get it, defeat gravity. And I love certain stuff like that. It's kind of something that many audiences will kind of gloss over. But as an animator, you'll notice just like, that's really nice that they added in the weight of this case as he opens it instead of just opening it up. And that's what really gives heart to motion capture. This now leads to Royce entering the scene. And one thing I love about Royce is this successive breaking of joints. And you can see from the shoulder to the elbow to the wrist how he whips out this gun. He whips out a gun. You don't see a lot of people whip out a gun like this. So it brings not only a successive breaking of joints, but it's also a character. Like, you see this guy is just whipping out this big gun and waving it around almost. You see him point at your friend, and then it goes directly towards you. And there's a lot to take from this, because he slowly gets out of the garage, and then as he starts going forward, his movement starts to heighten. Right? He starts moving a little faster, and that's when we whip out the gun. You have your friend that immediately reacts to it, raising his hands up when the gun is pointed at him, and then it goes to you. Really great shot, a lot of great movement in there, a lot of great acting as well. Moving forward, this brings us to the weapon animation, or the mantis weapon, I believe they call it. I wish this animation was a little bit better. I wish we could see the arms actually transforming. I think that would be a cool shot to have. Just for the audience to mix it up, to switch it up. However, when she goes onto the wall, you can really feel the power behind those arms as they go into the wall. I think the camera shake does a great job in selling that animation. This now leads us to the transition of her jumping off the wall, and going into the stealth kill. I think this is a little off. If you really scrub through it, there's maybe about 1 or 2 frames where it's just completely paused or still. And it's that transitioning into her actually doing the stealth kill. That can obviously be cleaned up, smoothed out. Nothing really horrible about this whole demo. The whole demo, I had to really nitpick and go frame by frame in order to find out stuff that, I either didn't like or I thought could have been better. And as you can see, most of the stuff that I covered was actually just positive reinforcement. Because this game looks like it's going to be very high quality. I can't wait to play it. You guys can't wait to play it. I wish 2020 would be here yesterday, honestly, because that's when all of the heavy-hitting games seem to be coming out, and many of the games that I'm excited for. Anyways, guys, that's the video. Let me know what you guys think, whether or not you're excited for this game, or whether you're still not sold. Either or. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please feel free to like, share, comment, subscribe. Until next time, guys, keep animating.